まずは仲間集めだ。10人は欲しいな。そして海賊機。よっしゃー、行くぞー。海賊王に俺はなる。
This line from Chapter 1 has set up one of the biggest expectations in all of One Piece. There will be at least 10 crewmates. But we all know what Oda likes to do with expectations. I'd like to start this video off by explaining to everyone the surefire, time-tested, author-approved secret to blowing away your reader's expectations. You, as the author, purposefully set up other expectations. I'd like to show everyone exactly how Oda has done this throughout the series, specifically in regards to crewmates, starting with this line from Chapter 1, about 10 crewmates. Oda has clarified that Luffy specifically meant he wanted these crewmates before the Grand Line. Now, when reading blind, many people do assume that Luffy will gather these 10 crewmates relatively quickly, and that will be the core cast for the rest of the series. Oda starts this series by saying Luffy wants 10 crewmates, then gives him 4 before the Grand Line, which is even specifically brought up, explaining it was foolish to head to the Grand Line with such a small crew. This is how Oda plays with our expectations in the East Blue. Most of the individual crewmates are made pretty obvious early on. Most people can intuit that Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji will end up on the crew fairly quickly after their introductions. The East Blue crew are at least presented as normal humans with no devil fruits intentionally. The East Blue was meant to be more grounded as compared to the Grand Line, where the crewmates are more fantastical and have devil fruits. The Grand Line is when Oda starts truly toying with our expectations for crewmates. Chopper played with our expectations a bit, with him being the first crewmate that wasn't quite human, though he would not be the last. However, before Chopper joined the crew, Oda began setting up an expectation with a much more shocking outcome: the expectation for Vivi to join the crew. Vivi rode with the Straw Hats for multiple arcs, and became a trusted ally in that time, Luffy even extending her the invitation to join the crew. However, the crewmate we got was someone who was seen as one of the least likely options to join the crew, the former right hand of the biggest villain Luffy had faced at that point. Oda continued messing with us with Frankie. He started in Jaya, where the damage to the Sunny was first brought up, and it was clear that the Straw Hats needed a shipwright soon. 2 arcs later, the Long Ring Longland arc was focused on Davy back fights, and is a perfect setup for the Straw Hats to get a new crewmate. But in the end, Luffy did not choose any of the shipwrights he could have taken. Then in Water 7, Oda once again gave us plenty of options for shipwrights to join the crew. However, the one we got was once again the least expected option, another character who was initially framed as a villain. The last crewmate to join in Paradise, Brook, messed with expectations in 2 ways. For one, very few people expect a literal skeleton to join the crew, and 2, Brook is the only crewmate that simply said yes when Luffy asked him to join. Now in the New World, Oda has messed with our expectations for crewmates in a whole new way, by not giving us any really. We got the promise of one new crewmate very early on in Part 2, Jinbei, but even then he did not permanently join the crew until Wano, about 10 years later. Now back when the New World started, there may have been some people who thought the final crew would be 10 crewmates, and that we wouldn't get the final one until near the end of the series, but the general consensus amongst the fanbase was that there would be either 10 or 12 crewmates, 4 from each sea Luffy visited. If you told a reader about 10 years ago that we would still be at 9 crewmates 10 years later, most would not believe you. To add to this, back during Dressrosa, Oda gave an interview to the China Times. This has been translated from Chinese a couple different ways, but it always involves Oda saying that there will either be new crewmates or new Nakama appearing successively. Now, regardless of whether Oda said crewmates or Nakama, Oda knows what Nakama implies to the readers. In fact, The 10 crewmate line in Japanese actually says Luffy wants 10 Nakama, not crewmates. Oda knows what he is implying when he says new Nakama will be appearing successively. Yet this was said all the way back in 2014, and here we are 10 years later in 2024 with no new crewmates since then. And on top of that, Oda pushed the idea of Yamato as a Straw Hat hard. Oda knew when he introduced Yamato that he would not be sailing with the Straw Hats when they left Wano, so what gives? Why did Oda push Yamato as a Straw Hat so hard, other than to slightly mess with our expectations for crewmates once again? And why did he say that new crewmates would appear successively? This all ties back to the infamous 10 crewmates line, all the way back to Chapter 1. But before I go over that, I'd like to talk a bit about the origins of One Piece. Now this is going to start a recurring section in this video, where I go over an Oda quote and show you how he is using it to tell a half-truth or misdirect us. Authors do stuff like this all the time, typically to hide future aspects of their works, or to just mess with their fan base, which Oda is well known to do. Now this statement by Oda is a very well known one in the One Piece community, and that is that One Piece was originally going to be a 5-year series, and that it was originally only about defeating the Yonko. Now I'd like to go over what the overall structure of this story only about defeating the Yonko would have been, because it will be important later. The structure of the world of One Piece was established early on. Concepts like the Grand Line, the Red Line, and the Four Blues are established very early. They also directly tie into what the One Piece is. The destruction of Mary Joie and likely the entire Red Line. The creation of the All Blue. In this version of One Piece, Luffy likely would have gathered his initial crew in the East Blue, then in the first half of the Grand Line, defeated Big Mom and Kaido. The second half of the Grand Line would likely have had Luffy as a Yonko himself, similar to the situation we are in now, with him and the other Yonko competing to find the One Piece, and ending with Luffy finding the One Piece and becoming the Pirate King. Oda essentially took what was supposed to be the bulk of the entire story of One Piece and moved it into the second half of the Grand Line. The first half of the New World has been about Luffy going from a supernova to a Yonko, while the final saga is about Luffy going from a Yonko to the Pirate King. Going back to the 5-year series quote, most people in the One Piece community seem to take this quote to mean that when Oda released the first serialized chapter, he thought it would only take about 5 years to finish One Piece. However, I think there are a couple pieces of information that a lot of people don't consider when reading that 5-year series statement. First, originally, even back in 7th grade, Oda was drawing what he would call his pirate manga. The real development timeline of One Piece started when Oda was young. Nowhere in that quote does it say, "I thought it would take about 5 years when One Piece started getting published." The word originally is contextual. It can mean yesterday or 30 years ago depending on the speaker's intentions. Second, and more importantly, we know that One Piece was rejected by Shueisha multiple times. This 5-year version of One Piece was the version of One Piece rejected by Shonen Jump's higher-ups. And think about it. We know One Piece was rejected 3 times because of some comments by Oda's editor at the time, which means Oda pitched One Piece 4 times before it got accepted. He didn't come to Shueisha with the same pitch 4 times in a row. Something had to have changed, and if what we got was the 5-year series, what was the version that got rejected? A 3-year series about traveling the entire planet? No, the 5-year series got rejected. The 30-plus year series is the one we got. Now let's go over the timeline a bit based on what information we have. Oda's first editor at Shonen Jump had rejected many of Oda's pitches for series in the past, and his last-ditch effort to get published was the original version of Romance Dawn. This is the first time one of Oda's pitches got accepted by his editor, and he approved it for further development. And that's the key word, further development. Around the time this first version of Romance Dawn was published, Oda got a new editor, Takanori Asada, and I believe he was the one who helped Oda develop One Piece into what it is today. The original 5-year version of One Piece is fairly simplistic. This is likely the parts of One Piece Oda had been developing since he was a teenager, but it was not enough for Shueisha's higher-ups to approve the series for serialization, and they were right to reject it. If we did get that 5-year version of One Piece, the series would not be seen in the same light as it is today. It would be much closer to a mid-grade shonen that came and went. Might have been a good series, but part of what makes One Piece so satisfying to read is the world building and long-term foreshadowing coming together to make it truly feel like a journey around the world. Oda realized this, moved his original plans for the story into the second half of the Grand Line, added the warlords as the major threat in the first half of the Grand Line, expanded the world building, and added a few other elements on top of that. This is the pitch that got accepted, and started One Piece as we know it today. Oda knew when the first chapter was published that One Piece would last a lot longer than 5 years. He seemed dead set on making the East Blue exactly 100 chapters, and when you're trying to write a 5-year series, you don't typically make the prologue about 2 years of publication time. Now, Oda has definitely been pushing this narrative that, from the first publication date, he meant the series to last 5 years, and he did this for quite a few reasons. First, this adds to the mystique of him as an author, to create all this intricate foreshadowing, but having the fanbase believe he's just coming up with everything off the top of his head. Second, it's just another way for Oda to play with everyone's expectations once again. And the third and most important reason, it's a lot harder to get people to read your series when you tell them, you'll get the resolution in about 20 to 30 years. That sort of commitment scares away most readers. It's one thing once you've already been going for 20 years and already have a dedicated fan base and reputation. It's another thing to be out for 5 to 10 years and tell potential readers that they won't get the conclusion for a very long time. Now, to further add to this point of Oda purposefully misleading us on the origins of One Piece, I'd like to go over another quote by Oda. In a 2018 interview, Oda said the following: "My original plan was to assemble a crew of 10 within the first year and a half. After 20 years, the story's about 80% complete, yet there are still only 9 crew members." Here Oda seems to be implying that the initial 10-man crew was supposed to assemble in the East Blue, before the Grand Line, like he said Luffy meant in Chapter 1. However, there is something about this quote that is very fishy. Here's the concept art of the Straw Hat crew. We can tell this art is likely from before the publication of One Piece, because even early characters like Usopp are different than the final versions. I think this art was likely used in one of Oda's pitches to Shonen Jump. Now, while characters like Robin and Frankie overwent some big changes, we can see that characters like Chopper, Brook, and Jinbei were planned from the very beginning. However, as I talked about in the beginning of the video, there is a stark contrast between the crewmates Luffy met in the East Blue and the Grand Line. The East Blue in general was made to be much more grounded and mundane compared to the Grand Line, where the truly fantastical elements of One Piece start up. The crewmates from these seas also reflect that. The crewmates from the East Blue are, at least at the time, seemingly normal humans with no devil fruit powers, and you'll see in the concept art that they are the crewmates closest to Luffy. They were always meant to join first. Conversely, the crewmates from the Grand Line were always meant to have something that makes them different, and most of them have devil fruits. My point being, these crewmates from the Grand Line were never meant to be introduced in the East Blue. Luffy was never meant to go to places like Thriller Bark and Fishman Island before the Grand Line. Yet here we have Oda saying that these crewmates were supposed to be introduced in the first year and a half. Now you could argue that initially Luffy was supposed to enter the Grand Line much earlier, but that would entail Luffy not only getting through the East Blue in under a year while meeting 4 crewmates, but visiting enough islands in the Grand Line for Luffy to actually meet these extra 6 crewmates within a year and a half, because I doubt Oda intended Luffy to meet Chopper and Jinbei on the same island. Oda is not stupid. He knew when the series started that crewmates like Brook and Jinbei would be saved for later on in the Grand Line, and he also knew it would take a lot longer than a year and a half to get there. So what is Oda talking about with this quote? Well, I believe Oda accomplished exactly what he set out to do. In the prologue, Luffy met 10 people who, after learning the truth of the Void Century, will join Luffy at the end of the series to take down the world government and bring the dawn of the world. But it does not stop there. In each sea Luffy visited, he met 10 characters that would join him in the future to upturn the status quo. And with the reveal of Sabo later in the story as the 11th crewmate Luffy met in the East Blue, that leaves us with a total of 31 crewmates. This is why Oda said back in 2014 that we would get multiple crewmates successively. Oda has introduced 4 crewmates since then. In fact, Oda has been introducing crewmates constantly throughout the run of this series. And I believe this is the biggest change between that 5-year version of One Piece and the one we got. Oda wanted to build up a bigger, more realistic pirate crew, and a story that believably built up these characters as joining forces to usher in a new era, but he knew focusing on that many characters would be unwieldy. So he set up a core crew that would be the focus of most of the series, while introducing and reintroducing the characters that would join Luffy near the end of the series. Overall, Oda knew he would structure the story like this. In the East Blue, Luffy would gather his initial crew of 4, while introducing the reader to 6 other future crewmates, with Sabo, the first crewmate Luffy ever met, being revealed to the reader at the end of Part 1. This part of the story would be about Luffy starting his crew and gaining his first bounty, while being more grounded and realistic than the Grand Line, with only a few devil fruits and non-human races introduced, while having mostly self-contained story arcs. In Paradise, the story would focus on Luffy gaining notoriety as a rookie and making a name for himself, with the warlords as the main threat. This is when the story would start moving into the more fantastic elements and locations, with more devil fruits and non-human or ambiguously human entities, while the storytelling would get more complex, with storylines spanning multiple arcs. In the New World, the story would focus on Luffy's journey to become a Yonko in the first half, then focus on Luffy going from a Yonko to the Pirate King, the part of the story we are currently in. This is when the story would amp up the fantastic elements to the extreme, with even more devil fruits and non-human races and devil fruit awakenings, while making the storylines even more complex and interconnected. Now, I am not saying that Oda had every little detail planned out from the very beginning. He had plenty of time to tweak things to his liking. His original plans for all of the Grand Line moved into the second half of the Grand Line, giving him a lot more freedom in the beginning of the series to be creative and spontaneous. However, he knew he would introduce at least 10 characters in each sea that would become crewmates of Luffy in the future. I am also not saying that we will be getting crewmates left and right throughout this entire final saga. There is a specific moment in the story that the majority of the crew will join all at once, when Luffy reaches Laughtale and finds the One Piece. The majority of this 31-man crew are a collection of Luffy's allies who will end up on the Sunny right before Luffy reaches Laughtale, during a war between the Yonko to find Laughtale. This group will learn the truth of the Void Century together, and make a vow over sake to take down the world government and bring the dawn of the world. However, there will be 2 members of the 31-man crew that are not at Laughtale, Sabo and Vivi. Luffy will reach Laughtale with 29 crewmates, and then save Sabo and Vivi afterwards. And to explain why, I'd like to show everyone Luffy's connection to the number 29, and his crew's connection to Roger's crew and Blackbeard's crew. Now, to explain all this, I'm going to start by showing everyone a very important SBS question. This reader found a pattern in the devil fruits of the Straw Hats, and in his own way, Oda confirms that this pattern is intentional, though he is obviously not ready to explain the specifics of it. This pattern was found using Goroawase, a Japanese word game that turns words into numbers based on the way they sound. This reader realized that all of the devil fruits of the crew, from Luffy to Brook, use up 2 digits from 1 to 10, with the only unused digits being 2 and 9. To add to this, other fans realized later that if you add up all of these numbers together, you get 325, which can be read as Sunny Go, or Sunny Go, cementing the fact that a 29 Devil Fruit would complete the crew. And as an aside, I believe the total Devil Fruit numbers of the 31-man crew will equal 1,000 Sunny Go. Now this reader also brings up that Kuma's Devil Fruit completes this pattern, with its Goroawase number being 29. This has been the basis of countless theories about Kuma dying and either Vivi or Frankie getting Kuma's fruit. However, I believe that the 29 Devil Fruit has been there from the very beginning. Nika, the other side of Luffy's Devil Fruit, was always meant to be the 29 that completes this pattern. Now Nika doesn't perfectly translate into 29 in Goroawase. Ni is definitely 2, however Ka does not have a true translation in Goroawase. That being said, there are multiple other things that connect either Luffy or Nika to the number 29. 1. The word Nika is derived from Nico, which does perfectly translate into 29 in Goroawase. 2. Niku, which is the Japanese word for meat, also translates to 29. Now Luffy's love of meat is obviously a pre-existing shonen trope that Oda is playing off of, but even so, this is just adding another layer to it. 3. Nika is who Kuma worshipped. The man with the 29 Devil Fruit had Nika as his hero. And finally, what I believe to be the most important connection, Gomu is 56 in Goroawase, and when you flip the 56, you get 29. Nika was always meant to literally be the flip side of the Gomu fruit, and Luffy was always meant to be a sun god, because it ties directly into what the One Piece is, and the dawn of the world. Which brings me to Roger's crew. Oda has made it very clear that Luffy is going to surpass Roger, which is why it is so strange to me that Oda gave Roger such a large crew. Oda is not going to make it so that Luffy surpasses Roger in every way except in crew size, especially when he has made Crewmate Expectations such an important part of this series. Oda gave complete designs and names for all of Roger's crew, yet the vast majority of these characters will never truly be important to the story. If Oda wanted Luffy to have a crew of 10 or 12, he would have made Roger's crew smaller so that Luffy can surpass him in that way as well. There is no way that more than 10 of these characters will be important to the story, so why add them to Roger's crew in the first place? Well, the key to all of this is the number of people that were with Roger on the day he reached Laughtale. Leaving Shanks and Buggy behind, Roger reached Laughtale with 26 other people. And just like you flip the 56 to get 29, when you flip the 6 of 26, you get 29, the number of people Luffy will have with him at Laughtale. And to cap this all off, Nika is a Japanese onomatopoeia for a smile, directly connecting it to the smiling and laughing themes of the Will of D and Laughtale. Luffy will reach Laughtale with 29, or Nika, crewmates, a smile. Then, after making this vow to bring the dawn of the world, Luffy, these 29 crewmates, and the Grand Fleet will go to New Marineford, located directly next to Mary Geoise, and save Sabo from being executed like Ace, then immediately storm Mary Geoise afterwards to save Vivi from Emu, making the final 31-man crew. Now, in a similar vein to Roger's, Blackbeard's crew is also connected to Luffy's crew. When Blackbeard is first mentioned, there was an emphasis placed on there being 5 members of his crew, the exact same as Luffy's at the time. When Blackbeard expanded his crew again, he gained 5 members, which seemed to be 1 more than Luffy at the time. However, the same place where Blackbeard recruited these crewmates, Impel Down, was the same place that Luffy met his next crewmate, Jinbei. And finally, Oda saved the reveal of the 10th Titanic captain for the same arc where Luffy met his 10th crewmate, Bonnie. As Luffy's crew expands throughout the series, so does Blackbeard's, and this is going to continue all the way up to 31 crewmates. Many of the villains that the Straw Hats have defeated throughout the series will end up siding with Blackbeard towards the end of the story. Looking back through this series after this reveal will show that not only was Oda constantly introducing new Straw Hats, but he was constantly introducing new Blackbeard pirates as well. This entire series has been about these two pirate crews with opposing ideologies coming into conflict with each other, and this will come to a head at the final battle of the series, where many of the heroes and villains of One Piece will fight to fulfill either Luffy's or Blackbeard's version of the Will of D. Many people see Emu as the final villain of the series, but there is a reason that Oda revealed Emu before Rocks, the man whose will was inherited by Blackbeard. Rocks was Roger's greatest enemy, not Emu, while Blackbeard will be Luffy's greatest enemy. And just like Luffy has Blackbeard, and Roger had Rocks, I believe Joy Boy had Davy Jones. I also think it is likely that Davy Jones was the one to defeat Joy Boy, probably the two of them taking each other out, and Emu simply took advantage of the situation to rise to power. Now I'm going to go over how I believe the rest of the series will unfold by going over each arc from here on out individually. However, I am not going to go over every single detail, just what I believe to be important. On my channel I have videos going over these arcs in more detail. Some of what I bring up in those videos I have changed my mind on as I've figured things out more, but overall these videos will explain more if you want more information. Now to show you how the current saga is going to be structured, we need to look back at the first part of the New World. This starts at Punk Hazard, the beginning of Luffy's plot to take down Kaido, and ends at Wano, when Luffy finally defeats Kaido. This part of the story is about Luffy going from a supernova to a Yonko. During this part of the story, Oda purposefully mirrored the first half of the Grand Line. Each New World island mirrored about 3 islands from Paradise, starting with Punk Hazard mirroring Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island, and ending with Wano mirroring Amazon Lily, Impel Down, and Marineford. Now it is important to note that Oda can and will allude to arcs other than the ones he is directly mirroring. For example, in Punk Hazard, Oda alludes to Alabasta in this scene, though we all know Dressrosa is the true Alabasta mirror, and in Egghead we get allusions to Little Garden in Enies Lobby, but the focus is on Sabaody. Speaking of Egghead, now that we have mirrored all of the first half of the Grand Line, we see ourselves once again back at a mirror of Sabaody, and using this information, we can tell a lot about how Oda plans to structure this final saga. What is happening in the story right now is that we are building up to another mirror of Marineford, and this will be a moment that many people have been waiting for a long time, Blackbeard getting his 3rd Devil Fruit. Now going back to Wano for a second, I would like to reveal the reason that Oda tried to convince us that Yamato would join the crew, just to back out at the last second. In the arc right before the final saga, Yamato is the last of these 31 crewmates to be introduced to the reader. This is part of why Oda tried to convince us that Yamato was going to be the next Straw Hat. It was a marker for both him and us that the final crewmate had been introduced to the story. However, while Yamato is the final crewmate introduced to the reader, he was not the final crewmate introduced to Luffy. Oda ended Wano introducing the final Straw Hat into the story, and began the final saga with Luffy meeting the last Straw Hat he would meet, and the next crewmate to officially join the crew, Bonnie. Even though Bonnie was introduced to the reader much earlier, in Sabaody, Luffy himself did not meet Bonnie until Egghead, and a big part of the reason for this is Bonnie's connection to Vivi. Just about everyone who believes the 10 crewmate theory believes that Vivi will be the 10th and final Straw Hat, and once again, this is an expectation Oda himself built up. Yet there's a rapidly increasing amount of evidence that Bonnie will be the next Straw Hat. Out of these 31 crewmates, Vivi is the first crewmate Luffy met in the Grand Line, at Reverse Mountain, while Bonnie is the final crewmate Luffy met in the Grand Line, at Egghead. Bonnie is the final crewmate that Luffy met, though she will be the next to officially join, while Vivi will be the final crewmate to officially join when Luffy saves her from Emu. Bonnie is a mirror of Vivi. They are both princesses with seemingly dead fathers now wanted by the world government, and she is taking the role that many people thought Vivi would take, the 10th and final crewmate. Now Egghead is a mirror of Sabaody, and we are building up to Marineford. We can see Oda setting this up in the next arc, Elbaf, which will be a mirror of Amazon Lily. When Robin saw Luffy in the newspaper, she noted that the X on his arm was clear, while the rest of the photo was blurry, and that is because this photo is doctored. Vivi is currently with Big News Morgans, and this was a way for her to get out a message to the Straw Hats that only they would understand. However, the only crewmates who would understand this message, the Alabasta crew, were separated from the rest, and it may be some time before Robin brings this up to them. Imu wants Vivi specifically, and I don't think Oda would bring this up if she wasn't going to get kidnapped eventually. Oda is going to make it look like Vivi will finally join as the 10th Straw Hat, until she is kidnapped by the world government, eventually leading to Bonnie joining the crew. Something very important to note is that after Marineford, Luffy returned to Amazon Lily to heal, and in the same way, I believe right after this upcoming Mirror of Marineford, Luffy will once again return to Elbaf. Elbaf is going to be split into 2 parts. The arc actually focused on Elbaf itself, and the arc focused on Luffy and Shanks finally reuniting. This initial visit is going to be focused on the culture of Elbaf and the Giants, and will likely have lore drops that will be very important for the overall series. We now know that Nika originated from Elbaf, so it is very likely that we will get a lot more important information regarding him. On top of that, Saul and the other Giants of Elbaf are the ones who saved what they could from Ohara's library. Whatever is left of Ohara's research is at Elbaf. We will likely get some very important information regarding the Void Century and Joy Boy. Now when it comes to Shanks, when he defeated Kid, Shanks said that he had just been planning to leave, and during Vegapunk's message he was shown on his ship. I don't think Shanks will be there during this first Elbaf arc. And more than that, if the moment Luffy defeated Kaido and became a Yonko himself wasn't enough of a great pirate moment for Shanks to want to meet Luffy, I don't think the Egghead incident is that moment either. Before Shanks will meet Luffy, Luffy will have to face his greatest foe, the man who gave Shanks his scar, Blackbeard. And the next 2 arcs after Elbaf are going to focus on establishing Blackbeard as a true threat to Luffy. At the end of Amazon Lily, Luffy got the news that Ace was imprisoned at Impel Down awaiting his execution, leading him to rush to Impel Down to break him out. And I believe that near the end of Elbaf, Luffy will get the news that Garp is imprisoned on Fullalead Island, and Luffy will head there to save him. Impel Down was the first time Luffy and Blackbeard truly fought, though the fight was cut short, and its mirror, Fullalead, will be the first time the Straw Hats fight the Blackbeard pirates. Now that Luffy has 10 crewmates, it is finally time for the Straw Hats to face Blackbeard and the 10 Titanic captains. However, there is something strange here. Kuzan and Bonnie. Many people had figured out Kuzan was the 10th captain well before the reveal. Oda waited to reveal this until the same arc that Luffy met the 10th Straw Hat. Now, not every Straw Hat has one, but certain Blackbeard pirates are direct counterparts to certain Straw Hat crewmates. For example, Usopp and Van Augur, and Chopper and Doc Q. You would expect that Oda making us wait for the reveal of the 10th Titanic captain until the 10th Straw Hat would make them counterparts. However, Bonnie and Kuzan are definitely not connected in that way. They really don't have much in common outside of being the 10th crewmate of their respective crews. I highly doubt Oda is setting up a child to fight a former Marine Admiral. Kuzan's actual counterpart will be the next crewmate to join Luffy, Smoker. Both ex-Marines turned pirates after growing disillusioned with the world government. Smoker and Kuzan's meeting in Punk Hazard is heavily foreshadowing this, as Kuzan tells Smoker that leaving the Navy has essentially opened his eyes. This is what Smoker's entire character arc has been about. Smoker is all about following his own personal sense of justice, and many times throughout the series, he has come to the realization that the world government was in the wrong, while the Straw Hats were much closer to his own personal sense of justice. Smoker was always written to eventually realize that the world government does not align with his own morality, and that his morality often leads him to aligning with Luffy. And I believe it is the Egghead incident that will finally push Smoker to come to terms with that. At the end of Alabasta, Smoker learns that the government is giving him the credit for taking down Crocodile, and is furious that they are attempting to cover up the truth. A similar event to this is going to be the breaking point for Smoker. The world government framed Luffy for the Egghead incident, saying he kidnapped Vegapunk. Most people believe that Luffy was the one who assassinated Vegapunk. Smoker took the children of Punk Hazard to Vegapunk for treatment. He knows that Vegapunk is a good person, and is likely going to be furious at Luffy when he hears this, potentially going after him right away. However, eventually he will learn that this is a cover-up, and that Luffy was the one protecting Vegapunk from the world government, and this realization will be the final straw, leading him to leave the Navy and join the Straw Hats. This realization may take some time. I'm not sure exactly which arc he will officially join the crew, but the seeds are already being sown, and by the end of the upcoming Mirror of Marineford, he will join the crew. I brought him up now though, because I believe he will be at Fullalead to act as a foil to Kuzan, regardless of whether or not he is a Straw Hat at the time. I would also like to bring up that when the third crewmate Luffy recruited in the East Blue joined, Usopp, Luffy gained his first ship, the Going Merry, and when the third crewmate recruited in Paradise joined, Frankie, Luffy gained the Thousand Sunny as his second ship. Smoker would be the third member that joined in the New World, so around the same time he joins, Luffy will gain a third ship, Punk Records. The Sunny is obviously not going to be replaced, but this is a way Luffy can gain a ship in the New World without making the Sunny obsolete. It will be more of an add-on to the Sunny, giving them access to all of Vegapunk's research. Oda has already brought up the strange nature of Punk Records, as Vegapunk's brain is still alive while his body is dead. So I think Oda is going to paint Vegapunk as an artificial Klabouterman. This way he can also essentially join the crew, without actually being a crewmate. I also believe the giant egg on Roger's ship was a way to hint this to the reader, though it will also have a greater purpose. Now my next prediction will definitely be a controversial one, but I believe it's the truth and there are good reasons for it. Throughout this final saga, I believe there will be 3 Davy-back fights. I will go over the reasons these make sense as they come up, but Fullalead is where I believe the first one will take place. Davy-back fights originated on Fullalead, and the setup of this arc involves Luffy trying to rescue a prisoner. So I think what will happen is that Luffy will demand Blackbeard give him Garp, and Blackbeard will say something like, "You can have him, but we have a tradition on Pirate Island. You have to win him back in a Davy-back fight," to which Luffy will agree. Now Fullalead and the arc right after are both going to be about establishing Blackbeard as a huge threat to Luffy, so I do not think this will end up going well for the Straw Hats. I don't think they will permanently lose any crewmates. Blackbeard might take Lilith or something else valuable to him, and Zoro might beat Shiryu because of his promise not to lose to another swordsman, but overall the Straw Hats are going to lose this conflict. The last round of a Davy-back fight is always the captains fighting, so Luffy will have a one-on-one fight with Blackbeard, regardless of whether or not there is a Davy-back fight this arc, and I think this will end up being one of Luffy's worst defeats in the entire series. And now it's time for me to go over another Oda quote, this time about the pirate with an eye patch that he has been saving for the end of the series. This comment was released as part of the One Para series, a collection of leaflets that were released with other products as part of One Piece's 10th anniversary, where Oda says, "So what is a pirate? If you ask someone with artistic talents to draw a pirate, you will normally get a sketch that looks like this, or this. Indeed, a pirate. Very easy to understand, but if you take off the eye patch, there's a big difference to one with and one without. The one without looks like a normal middle-aged man. So then that means eye patch equals pirate. It's just like afro equals champion type thing. So have you noticed yet? Well, you probably haven't. That in One Piece, there has not been one single pirate with an eye patch, Yes, I know, who cares, right? But this is my secret, behind-the-scenes policy. It's not like every pirate has an eye patch, right? You can totally draw pirates without an eye patch. And with that thought in mind, it all began. The story of a normal-looking boy's pirate story. I thought, if there's an image in everyone's head about what a pirate is, then I thought I would write/draw about the process of a boy getting there. But it's not like I dislike eye patches, so in the final scenes of One Piece, there is one pirate who appears with an eye patch. I'm itching to draw this character. Oda is saying that there's a stereotypical image of what a pirate is, specifically a man with an eye patch, and that the story of One Piece is about the process of Luffy becoming that stereotypical image of a pirate. The pirate with an eye patch that Oda is saving for the end of the manga is Luffy himself, though I do believe Joy Boy may also share that trait. This has been foreshadowed all the way back from Chapter 1. In the first chapter, Luffy stabs himself in the left eye, while Shanks loses his left arm. Much later in the series, we learn that the man who gave Shanks the scars over his left eye was Blackbeard. And this is because Blackbeard is the one who is going to take Luffy's left eye. Oda wanted Luffy to be the pirate with an eye patch, but he also wanted us to see the moment he loses his eye unfold in the story for the biggest emotional impact. And he wanted Luffy's greatest foe, Blackbeard, to be the one to take it, to truly impart on the reader how much of a threat he is. Now Luffy may lose his eye during a later fight with Blackbeard, right before Laughtale, but I am bringing it up now because I think there is a very good chance that this happens on Fullalead. Fullalead is called Hachinosu, or Beehive Island, in Japanese. It's Japanese slang for being shot full of holes, like a beehive, and the English name, Fullalead, also evokes this imagery. It seems very thematically appropriate for this to be the island where Luffy gets a hole in his head, as opposed to later on. Finally, I think as an act of humiliation, Blackbeard will take the Straw Hat's Jolly Roger after winning the final round. This will force Luffy to eventually transition to a version of the Straw Hat Jolly Roger with an eye patch, more accurately representing Luffy's new look. And now we get to the Mirror of Marineford. But before I go over that, we first have to go over the last Mirror of Marineford, Wano. There's a good amount of the fanbase who believe Wano was a bit disappointing at parts, and that Wano is an example of Oda being a bad writer. Now I personally believe Act 3 was a bit drawn out, but I think there is something very important that a lot of people who criticize Wano miss. Oda intentionally wrote Wano to be anticlimactic in many ways, and I will show you exactly how Oda purposefully ended things in a disappointing manner, or just left them unresolved completely. Zoro was introduced to Kotetsu too and was very interested in it, only for Oda to do nothing with it by the end of the arc. Zoro and Kaido were expected to get fully fleshed out backstories, because Oda set up that expectation with Sanji and Big Mom in Whole Cake, only for both of them to get very minor flashbacks in comparison. Momo was adamant about opening Wano's borders, his father's dying wish, and the world government was at the ready to invade the moment the borders fell, but Momo backed out at the last second. And finally, Oda tried his hardest to convince everyone that Yamato was going to join the crew, and hinted towards others potentially joining, just for no one to join by the end. Wano was an intentional anticlimax, because the upcoming Mirror of Marineford, the return to Wano, is going to be a super climax. Wano's act structure is based on kabuki plays, which always have 5 acts. We still have 2 more acts remaining in Wano. Caribou is on his way to give Blackbeard the information about Pluton being in Wano, and here Shanks says he was sure Blackbeard was going to show up at Wano, foreshadowing the return to Wano. Right after Fullalead, both the Blackbeard pirates and the Straw Hats will head to Wano, and all of these disappointing or unresolved plot threads will come to a head. Zoro will get Kotetsu too in a new flashback likely involving his Shimotsuki heritage. As for Kaido's flashback and the other points, they will happen over one incident, when Blackbeard gets his third devil fruit, Orochi's. Now let's talk about devil fruits for a moment, using what we know to come to a logical conclusion about how Blackbeard has multiple devil fruits. Big Mom gained her fruit by eating Mother Caramel, and we can intuit from this that devil fruits are tied to a specific body part, and when you eat it, you can gain their powers. And now with what is happening to Vegapunk, we can deduct that devil fruits are stored in the brain. Vegapunk's heart stopped beating. The only part of his original body left is his brain. Yet as far as we know, his devil fruit has not passed on. Punk Records is not going to stop growing here when it is One Piece's version of the internet. It will be made public access in the future along with the rest of Vegapunk's dream. None of the other punks have mentioned his devil fruit being gone or Punk Records not growing like usual. As long as Vegapunk's brain is alive, his devil fruit will remain and keep causing his brain to grow. This is how Blackbeard has been stealing devil fruits. In Marineford, it was noted that Whitebeard's body looked the same after his devil fruit was stolen. However, at least in the manga, his head was partially blown off. All Blackbeard needed to do was steal a tiny piece of exposed brain matter and eat it, and no one would even notice. This is precisely why Blackbeard can have multiple devil fruits as well. One of the prevailing theories on how he can have 3 devil fruits, and why he doesn't need sleep, is that Blackbeard has multiple personalities. We already know that Blackbeard is part of a special bloodline, likely something like the Tri-Brain tribe, and because he has 3 brains, he can have 3 devil fruits. Blackbeard is directly connected to the numbers 3 and 8. His birthday is August 3rd, his Darkness Fruit's Goroawase number is 83, and his Jolly Roger has 3 skulls with an 8-ended bone pattern. The 3 skulls on his flag are alluding to his special bloodline, while the 8 heads of the Orochi fruit play directly into both the 8-ended bone pattern and his multiple personalities, each personality getting its own head in his Zoan form. Now, in addition to being very hard to kill, the reason that Blackbeard wants Orochi's fruit is this connection between devil fruits and the brain. Blackbeard knows that the 8 heads of the Orochi fruit will grant him at least an extra 5 devil fruits, if not 8, making him an absolute monstrosity by the end of the series. Now back in Marineford, when Blackbeard got his second devil fruit, a couple of important things happened at the same time. The reveal of Blackbeard getting 5 new crewmates, and Blackbeard destroying Marineford. And similar events are going to happen when Blackbeard gets his third fruit. In the return to Wano, Blackbeard is going to use his Quake fruit to finally destroy the borders of Wano, unleashing what we will believe to be Pluton at the time, and leaving Wano vulnerable to the world government. This quake will also end up releasing Kaido and Big Mom from their magma prisons. Now, when Kaido and Big Mom teamed up, Fujitora declared that this was the return of the Rocks Pirates. However, neither of these characters are the inheritors of Rox's will. Blackbeard is. This was not the return of the Rocks Pirates. This was 2 former Rocks Pirates playing buddy-buddy. This is the return of the Rocks Pirates. Kaido, Big Mom, Weevil as a stand-in for Whitebeard, and Stussy as a stand-in for Bucket, all joining Blackbeard's crew. It is around this time that we will finally get the God Valley flashback. In Wano, through Odin's flashback, we learned more about Roger and saw the end of his journey, reaching Laughtale. This will be mirrored in the return to Wano, through a Kaido flashback, where we will learn more about Rox and see the end of his journey, the God Valley incident. This is why Oda waited until Wano to reveal Rox and the God Valley incident, because the return to Wano is when the Rocks Pirates will truly reform, and we will learn the truth of the God Valley incident. Now, the last time Blackbeard gained a bunch of crewmates, there was an odd man out, Shiryu, the former warden of Impel Down, who was not part of the battle royale that Blackbeard subjected his other new crewmates to. When these 4 Rocks Pirates join, I believe Blackbeard will also get another odd man out. a supernova to be the counterpart to Bonnie, either a Rouge or Caribou. A lot of people have drawn comparisons to Caribou and Bartholomew, and rightfully so. He definitely seems to have a similar fanboyish relationship to Blackbeard. However, Bonnie also idolizes Luffy now that she realizes he is Nika, making what could be an interesting counterpart to Caribou. Caribou's relationship to Blackbeard definitely seems more sycophantic than Bonnie and Luffy's, which is more of a mentorship, though those contrasts could be the whole point of them being counterparts. Blackbeard using his subordinates in a more parasocial way, while Luffy genuinely mentors and uplifts his. However, a Rouge may also look up to Blackbeard in a more grounded way like Bonnie, but we really don't know much about him, so time will tell. And with this, Blackbeard's crew will expand to 15, and at around the same time, so will Luffy's, finally breaking the expectation of 10 or 12 crewmates Oda has been setting up this entire series. At the end of Wano, Oda gave us hints of 4 different characters joining the crew, though none of them actually left with Luffy, because during the return to Wano, all 4 of them will join. This is why I said I was unsure when Smoker would join the crew. Oda might keep the crew at 10 and wait until the reveal of the 5 new Blackbeard pirates to reveal the 5 new Straw Hats. Or he could have Smoker join a bit earlier as the 11th crewmate, and make it seem like the return to Wano will give us what many people think is the 12th and final Straw Hat. Out of the 4, Yamato is the obvious one, with him constantly claiming he would ride with the Straw Hats, only to back out at the last second. However, Yamato is adamant about following in Oden's footsteps, and is traveling around Wano like Oden right now in the cover story. And just like Oden, he will also ride with the King of the Pirates for the final leg of his journey. Carrot became the leader of the Minks, even though she doesn't really seem to want to, with part of the reason she was given the position being that she was the inheritor of Pedro's will. However, Pedro's will was not to lead the Minks. It was to ride with the King of the Pirates and bring the dawn of the world. Luffy promised Tama that she could join the crew if she learned a ninjutsu by the time he returned, and I'm sure she will by the time of this arc. Finally, Luffy straight up called Momo one of his crew, and with the world government laying siege to Wano, Momo will likely realize that the best way he can liberate Wano is by going with Luffy and helping him find the One Piece. Luffy extended an invitation to Kinemon as well, however for multiple reasons I go over in other videos, I do not believe he will join the crew. His fake-out death in Wano was meant to foreshadow his actual death during the return to Wano. And to end this, just like Marineford, I believe Luffy will become unconscious near the end of this arc, and after that Shanks will intervene to de-escalate the situation, telling the rest of the Straw Hats to take Luffy and meet him on Elbaf. Well, now that we're done with the mirror of Marineford, where do we go from here? I believe Oda is going to mirror the last 3 locations Luffy visits in the Grand Line, with the first 3 he visited. The return to Elbaf mirroring Little Garden, Lodestar Island mirroring Whiskey Peak, and Laughtale mirroring Reverse Mountain, making the journey literally come full circle. Now the return to Elbaf is going to focus on what has been built up from Chapter 1, Luffy and Shanks' reunion. This is the second of the 3 Davy Back fights I mentioned earlier, and has been a very popular theory for a long time for good reason. It gives the Straw Hats and the red-haired pirates a more friendly avenue to compete with each other, culminating in a 1v1 fight with Luffy and Shanks. On top of that, Luffy promised to give the Straw Hat back to Shanks when they met again, but Luffy's hat is a key part of his character and design, so it has to go back to him at some point. Luffy choosing to take his hat back during the final round, instead of one of Shanks' crewmates, is the perfect way to accomplish this. Moving on to Lodestar, I'd like to start by explaining the connection between Lodestar and the road poneglyphs. Many translators initially translated the road poneglyphs as load poneglyphs, and that is no coincidence. For those who don't know, in Japanese the phonetics for both R and L are the same. Oda is definitely aware of this and plays around with it often. like Laughtale and Laughtale, Mother Flame and Mother Frame, Reverie and Leveille, etc. The road poneglyphs and Lodestar Island are definitely connected, and more than just their names. They are connected through the theme of navigation. In real life, lodestones are naturally magnetic ore that were used to create the first compasses. They are a very important part of navigation history. Lodestar Island is going to be the arc focused on navigation, because this is the arc where Nami will have to use the road poneglyphs to navigate the crew to Laughtale. To further tie into this theme of navigation, I also believe that the number 4 will be central to this arc. I believe Lodestar Island will be comprised of 4 islands, not only as a reference to the 4 road poneglyphs, but to the 4 cardinal directions. This is where I believe all 4 Yonko will meet to have a 4-way, 4-round Davy-back fight for the 4th road poneglyph. This will be the final Davy-back fight of the series. When Foxy challenged Luffy to a Davy-back fight, he said it would be a 3-coin Davy-back fight by orthodox rules, implying there are other rule sets. This would be a 4-coin Davy-back fight by unorthodox rules. Now I'd like to talk a minute about the man marked by flames. I'm not 100% on this, but I believe there's a pretty good chance that this man is Scopper Gaban. However, what I am 100% sure of is that Scopper will show up at either Lodestar or Laughtale. Looking back at the series, Oda had Luffy meet ex-Roger pirates at very specific points in the story. He met Shanks and Buggy, the apprentices, in the East Blue. But more importantly, Luffy met Crocus at Reverse Mountain, and Rayleigh at Sabaody, and these locations are very important for 2 reasons. 1, they are respectively the beginning and halfway points of the Grand Line, and 2, they are the locations that every single pirate looking for the One Piece has to go through, unless they are born in the Grand Line. I think it is likely that the Roger pirates are posted here for a reason. They were waiting for Joy Boy's successor at places they knew every pirate had to visit. Lodestar is the end of the Grand Line, where all the paths converge, and while not every pirate will make it here, any serious contender for the One Piece will. I think it makes a lot of sense that Scopper, as well as some of the other Roger pirates, safeguarded the 4th road poneglyph. They knew the day when Joy Boy's successor would find Laughtale was coming, and were waiting for the moment that all the true contenders for the One Piece would meet at Lodestar, to hold a Davy-back fight for ownership of the 4th road poneglyph. However, I believe everyone involved in this Davy-back fight is going to realize something important. When it comes to the road poneglyph, only the last round matters. Whoever wins the final round is going to end up with the poneglyph, leading the victors of the first 3 rounds to choose anyone or anything they need but the poneglyph. Then, in the final round, with the poneglyph unclaimed, there will be a draw, leading to everyone getting the poneglyph. Now this can also be accomplished by each Yonko winning 1 round, choosing the poneglyph and getting a rubbing of it, but having the draw here seems more interesting to me, making it seem like not only do all these crews have equal footing in the navigation to Laughtale, but they are all relatively matched in combat as well. The main point being that all 4 Yonko will have all 4 road poneglyphs, leading to the war that Oda has been hyping up for a while now, the war between the Yonko to see who can reach Laughtale first. I believe this part of the arc is mainly going to take place at sea, and much more than just the Yonko will be involved. Namely, the Marines trying to stop the Yonko from finding the One Piece, and more importantly, many of Luffy's allies throughout the series will show up to make sure that Luffy is the one who becomes the king of pirates. This is where all 29 of the crewmates that will be with Luffy at Laughtale will assemble. This is also where the 15-man Straw Hat crew, with the help of these allies, will fight the 15-man Blackbeard crew. I believe many of these fights will end up being duo fights, not only to incorporate the new members and give them a reason to board the Sunny, but because a few of these fights have been specifically set up as duo fights. The main fights I will go over are the 4 most important ones: Luffy and Kobe versus Blackbeard, Zoro and Momo versus Kaido, Sanji and Pudding versus Big Mom, and Smoker and Tashigi versus Kuzan. First, Luffy and Kobe fighting Blackbeard is going to be an allusion to Roger and Garp teaming up to take down Rocks. Until we see the God Valley flashback itself, it is harder to extrapolate anything else about this fight, but Luffy, Kobe, and Blackbeard are the inheritors of Roger's, Garp's, and Rocks' wills respectively. This gives Oda the chance to make this illusion here, give Kobe a chance to board the Sunny right before Laughtale, while also making it so that Luffy defeats Blackbeard in a 1v1 later, solidifying Luffy as the strongest pirate and surpassing Roger. Now the next two fights I will go over together because they are connected. Zoro vs Kaido, and Sanji vs Big Mom. Zoro has been tied to Kaido in many ways. Kaido was the main villain in Wano, which was Zoro's arc. He directly or indirectly imprisoned or executed members of the Shimotsuki clan, Zoro's family, and Zoro has been set up to follow in Ryuma's footsteps and slay a dragon. This is the reason that the Zoro kills Kaido theory got popular, even if just as a meme. These connections are truly there. Now the Zoro kills Kaido theory is typically mocked nowadays because Luffy ended up defeating Kaido during Wano. However, the people who mock it are missing two very important points. First, if Kaido is reintroduced into the story, Luffy has already defeated him. If Kaido ever fights the Straw Hats again, he is not going to be fighting Luffy in any serious capacity. Second, and more importantly, in the exact same way Oda has tied Zoro to Kaido, he has tied Sanji to Big Mom. Big Mom was the main villain of Whole Cake Island, Sanji's arc. She tried to execute Sanji's family, and Sanji's inability to hit women and his role as the chef of the crew has been built up to come to a head in his confrontation with Big Mom. Sanji will not be able to hit Big Mom because of his morals, but this will not matter because Big Mom's true greatest weakness is food. This is the reason that Oda made sure to point out that Zoro wounded Kaido, and the reason that Sanji's cake was the thing to stop Big Mom's rampage. She even says, "This cake is to die for," blatant foreshadowing. Now Momo has said he also wants revenge on Kaido, so he will be helping Zoro in this endeavor. It will be Zoro riding a dragon to slay another dragon. Sanji is more than likely going to walk in on Big Mom abusing Pudding in an effort to awaken her third eye powers to decipher the poneglyphs. Pudding will help Sanji cook whatever meal will end up being the death of Big Mom, just like she helped him bake the cake that stopped Big Mom's rampage in Whole Cake. Finally, Tashigi is going to confront Smoker about his decision to leave the Navy and join the Straw Hats, leading to a fight against Kuzan. Smoke is a byproduct of something burning, so Smoker awakening his fruit is going to give him the advantage he needs to defeat Kuzan's Ice Logia, likely through creating extreme heat. I believe that by the end of these fights, 6 characters will end up dying. 3 allies of Luffy, Shanks, Garp, and Rayleigh, and 3 enemies of Luffy, Kaido, Big Mom, and Kuzan. Shanks, Garp, and Rayleigh are likely going to end up sacrificing themselves to help Luffy and Kobe defeat Blackbeard, or to help Luffy reach Laughtale. Kaido and Big Mom will die to Zoro and Sanji respectively, while I believe Kuzan will meet his end by Blackbeard himself. The Rocks pirates were known for killing each other, and I believe Kuzan will be the example of this on Blackbeard's crew, with Blackbeard likely suspecting him of being a member of Sword. With these deaths, all 4 of the original Yonko will be dead, as well as 2 prominent figures from Roger's age, and this will be symbolic of the end of the old era and the beginning of a new one, right before Luffy reaches Laughtale and brings the dawn of the world. Near the end of this arc, I believe Oda is going to make it look like Luffy has 27 of these crewmates on his ship, one more than the 26 Roger had at Laughtale. However, there will be 2 people that Luffy does not account for. One, a stowaway, who I believe will be Buggy, hiding from the chaos due to cowardice, and the second is Gaimon, who will be stranded at Laughtale. I do not know how he will get there. There's a million ways Oda could do this. This is more going to be not only a gag, but symbolism. The man stuck in a treasure chest stranded at the location of the treasure Luffy has been searching for the entire series. Now before we go over Laughtale, I would like to go over exactly what I think the One Piece is, starting from what we know for sure it is, the creation of the All Blue. The world of One Piece is fragmented and difficult to navigate due to a combination of the Red Line and the Calm Belt. The destruction of Mary Joie, and likely the whole Red Line, fixes this issue, allowing free travel around the world and making it whole, or one piece. However, I do not believe this is the whole picture. There is another aspect to the One Piece that is potentially more important than making their planet one piece, making their universe one piece. Now, I've gone over this in past videos, and I'm going to go over it in much greater detail in my next video, but I will go over enough to give everyone an idea of why I feel this is true. Back in Ohara, you can clearly see a model of the One Piece universe, with 5 planets revolving around the Earth, a geocentric model of the universe. Many people just took this as a reference to our own planet's past when it was believed the universe revolved around the Earth, as well as being a reference to the Goroawase revolving around Imu, which we will get to in a minute. However, I believe this model of the universe is accurate to One Piece's universe. Not only is their planet fragmented, but their universe is as well, and must be made whole. In fact, I think it is likely that the reason their planet is fractured is because their universe is geocentric. The Calm Belt, the weird weather patterns and magnetism of the Grand Line, the Red Line, and the flood of the past were all a consequence of this. In Joy Boy's time, the universe revolved around the sun, but during the Void Century, Imu changed the way the universe fundamentally worked, creating the Red Line and the Grand Line. This is the biggest reason Luffy is a sun god, and I believe Nika was not a retcon. Luffy was always meant to be a sun god because this was always part of the One Piece. Now, there are 11 important celestial bodies in play here: the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, and the 8 other planets. We have confirmation of 7 of these celestial bodies being represented as characters in the series: Neptune as Shirahoshi, the Sun as Luffy, and the 5 inner planets as the Goroawase. I believe that each of these planets have an incarnation in the world of One Piece, and that this is what the ancient weapons truly are. Earlier I said that Blackbeard would destroy the borders of Wano, unleashing what we believed to be Pluton at the time. This is what I meant. In reality, Pluton is Momo. Just like Shirahoshi commands the Sea Kings, Momo has the ability to control Earth Kings. This is why Momo is able to control Zunesha. The Pluton that Odin's father said was slumbering beneath Wano is another giant animal for Momo to control. Sukiyaki just didn't know any better. In a similar vein, Vegapunk did not know any better when he called the weapon that destroyed Lelouja an ancient weapon. He even says in this panel that it's pure conjecture and he doesn't have any hard evidence. It is the logical conclusion to come to, but it's not the truth. Uranus is a person, likely able to command Sky Kings, like the giant snakes of Skypiea. This is also why Imu wants Vivi so badly. She is the new incarnation of the Earth, just like Imu. Vivi's powers are why she was able to conjure rain in Alabasta, and why Imu is tied to the sea. At first it might not be apparent the connection between the planet Earth and water, but even our own Earth is mostly water, even more so One Piece's planet. Without water, life would not exist, which is why Vegapunk called the sea the mother of nature. Now, all 11 of these new incarnations of the celestial bodies will end up joining Luffy's crew, to symbolize them revolving around the sun. Just like Imu and the Goroawase symbolize the 5 inner planets revolving around the Earth. These are who I currently believe to be the new incarnations on Luffy's crew. However, there are some where I am very certain, while others I am just making educated guesses. I will go over why I am making these guesses in the next video, but really these incarnations could be any one of the 31 crewmates. Now, Imu completely changed the structure of the universe, and Luffy is going to have to do it once again. But how? I believe the answer is the same weapon that destroyed Lelouja, and will destroy Mary Joie in the future: God Valley. God Valley disappeared without a trace and has completely vanished from any map. However, we have seen a very similar situation to this in the story before, with the story of Noland. Noland found the City of Gold, but once he told his king of its existence, he came back only for it to have completely vanished. Half of Jaya remained on the surface, while the other half, including the City of Gold, was sent into the sky by a knock upstream. And I believe the exact same thing happened to God Valley. Many people have drawn the connection between God Valley and Thriller Bark, because the zombies of the former Rocks pirates were part of Moria's crew, and we know that the island that makes Thriller Bark came from the West Blue, just like God Valley. However, this is only half of God Valley. The other half was blown into the sky by a knock upstream. This is what the split peak of God Valley is hinting at. This is also why Doflamingo was ordered to execute Moria at the end of Part 1. The government wanted the other half of God Valley to complete the weapon, though Moria escaped. When God Valley is finally reunited and the weapon is complete, it's not going to leave a hole in the ocean like it did at Lelouja. This is what's going to happen when it destroys Mary Joie. Now the key to all of this is the Mother Flame. We know for sure that the government desperately wanted Kaido's Devil Fruit. This is why the government had Vegapunk create a copy of it, though he told the government it was a failure. There is a very specific reason that the government wanted Kaido's fruit, and it's not because of its strength. The government has plenty of strong Devil Fruits. However, Kaido has one very important power that no other Devil Fruit has: the ability to move islands through the use of flame clouds. The Mother Flame is what Vegapunk created to satiate the government after telling them his Devil Fruit replica was a failure. It can create flame clouds and move God Valley at the government's whims, allowing them to use the weapon located on it to destroy any island they please. Now, the Mother Flame likely has other uses as an energy source or what have you, but this is the main reason why the government wants it so badly. They didn't seem to have any interest in killing Kaido during Wano, despite demanding Kaido's fruit from Vegapunk in the past. Instead, they told CP0 to focus on killing Luffy and kidnapping Robin, because they don't need Kaido's Devil Fruit anymore. Vegapunk does have a machine that creates island clouds. However, I do not believe they have full control over where the island goes. They drift like normal island clouds. In order to fully control an island's movements, you need flame clouds. It's also a possibility that using the Mother Flame as an energy source for this island cloud machine is what creates flame clouds. Now, by the end of the series, God Valley will be made whole again, and end up directly above Mary Joie, intersecting 3 different important locations: Fishman Island on the seafloor, Mary Joie on land, and God Valley in the sky. Now, after Roger found the One Piece, he mentioned that they were too early, and I believe there are at least 3 reasons for this. 1, he had to wait for the new incarnations of these planets to be born. 2, he needed to wait until God Valley was located above Mary Joie. And 3, he needed to wait for the planets to align. If the planets were to change orbit in the locations pictured here, they would need to move massive distances. The only time you can reset their orbits is when the planets are aligned. When Luffy activates the weapon on God Valley, what will happen is a giant burst of cosmic energy is going to surge through all of these celestial bodies, piercing them at their cores. This will fundamentally change their cores in some way or another. Maybe they are magnetized wrong, maybe the planets are spinning in the wrong direction. This is fantasy, and Oda can come up with many different ways this can work, but this is what is going to change their orbits. At the same time, this burst of energy will destroy Mary Joie, and likely reverse Mountain on the opposite end of the world. Nami has stated that the Red Line is like interlocking islands, and I believe that in the past they were individual islands, but when Imu changed the core of the planet, they combined and created the Red Line. This blast of cosmic energy will also undo this, leading to the red line crumbling into the islands they once were, and unifying all of the oceans into the all blue. Now moving on to the location of Laughtale, I believe Laughtale is located inside of Reverse Mountain, which is why it is a mirror of that arc. There are quite a few things pointing to this. 1. Reverse Mountain is where we first learned of Laughtale, and the cape on Reverse Mountain is called Twin Cape. Laughtale is what it is the twin of. 2. It would make the journey literally come full circle, requiring a true circumnavigation of the globe to reach. And 3. It plays off the biggest treasure hunting trope of all time. X marks the spot. The streams that lead up Reverse Mountain create an X, literally marking on every map the location of Laughtale. And more importantly than that, the intersections of the red line and the grand line create 2 giant X's around the globe. The red line and grand line intersect at 2 points on the map, and both of these points are important to the One Piece. The first intersection is Reverse Mountain, where Laughtale is and where you learn the true history, and what the One Piece truly is. The other intersection is Marineford, and this is the location you need to destroy in order to create the All Blue, and thus the One Piece. Not only are the streams of Reverse Mountain a play on X marks the spot, so is the geography of this world as a whole. And now I would like to go over another statement by Oda, that One Piece is going to end when Luffy finds the One Piece. This is, once again, Oda setting up an expectation for us, just so he can blow it away. Quite a few people have taken this to mean that Luffy is going to take down the world government before he finds the One Piece. However, I'm going to show you why this makes zero sense narratively for multiple reasons. For one, we know the One Piece will involve destroying Marineford, and I believe Laughtale is in Reverse Mountain, on the opposite side of the world. It would completely break the pace of Luffy's journey so far to head to Marineford before Laughtale. Luffy is not going to go back to the start of the New World, then go all the way back to Laughtale. It also muddies the circumnavigation of the globe thing I was talking about earlier. This is actually a pretty common storytelling trope that Oda is playing off of. Boy journeys around the world, attains enlightenment, and then changes the status quo. Oda is not going to have Luffy change the status quo before he reaches that enlightenment, namely learning the truth of the Void Century. 2. This is not how Oda builds up Luffy's confrontations with villains. Typically, this is how Oda builds up his villains. We learn of the evil they have wrought to a land and their people before Luffy fights with them, and that's what makes these fights so cathartic, and why you are rooting for Luffy to take them down. You understand the pain and suffering they have caused. Without the knowledge of the Void Century and understanding the full extent of what Imu has done to the world, Luffy taking down Imu is not going to feel nearly as climatic, and we are definitely not learning the full truth of the Void Century until Laughtale. And 3. Logtown is named after Prologue and Epilogue. It is where Roger was born and died, where the prologue of One Piece ended, and where the epilogue of One Piece will take place. We already know what island One Piece will end on, and it's not Laughtale, it is Logtown. So what does Oda mean when he says the series will end when Luffy finds the One Piece? He means that once the Straw Hats reach Laughtale, and we get the Luffy just laughed scene, One Piece as we know it will end. And One Piece, the epilogue and true final saga of One Piece, will begin. Oda has stated that One Piece's biggest inspiration is Dragon Ball, and I believe this title change is just another part of that. For those who don't know, the Dragon Ball anime changed its title to Dragon Ball Z because it was supposed to signify that the series was ending soon, so they added the last letter of the English alphabet to signify this. Now Dragon Ball Z ended up going on longer than Dragon Ball, partially due to its popularity, but I believe this sentiment inspired Oda, and was a big part of the reason he chose a word with a homophone as the title. On top of this, the Japanese title of One Piece, Hitotsunagi, has multiple different interpretations, including One Sea at Peace. The One Piece being connected to world peace has been there since the beginning, and that is a big part of what the All Blue is, world peace being achieved through an interconnected world. Back in that 2014 interview where Oda talks about Nakama appearing successively, there is an excerpt saying this. When asked about the meaning behind the title One Piece, and whether or not it has anything to do with the homonym, One Piece, or the end of the series, meaning Luffy would bring about world peace, Oda reportedly smiled and explained that the title's meaning is indeed related to the end of the series, so it would be senseless if he were to explain it now. This is Oda confirming this connection. He even says it's connected to the end of the series, though the interviewer did not put together that the title of the series would change to that homophone, and of course Oda was not going to elaborate and play his hand. Now to recap, I believe the One Piece will actually be 5 different things. 1. The knowledge of the Void Century, which will either be told through poneglyphs, or since the Ancient Kingdom had advanced technology, through something similar to punk records. 2. Binks Sake. The lyrics of Binks Sake actually allude to Laughtale in the One Piece several times, and I believe this is the sake Luffy and the 29 Straw Hats will drink over a vow to bring the dawn to the world. 3. The destruction of the Red Line and the Calm Belt, creating the All Blue. 4. Fixing the universe so that it's revolving around the sun rather than the earth. And 5, at least metaphorically, world peace. The Straw Hats finding the One Piece is going to be a moment of extreme realization and catharsis for the Straw Hat crew, and Oda wants the reader to also feel this. This is a moment that's going to completely recontextualize the entire series, as we not only realize what the treasure we've been searching for truly is, but realizing that Oda has been introducing new crewmates almost every arc since the beginning, and Oda is going to mark this moment of clarity with this title change, which will lead us to the final version of the Straw Hat Jolly Roger. Throughout the series, Oda has planted a very specific visual, a symbol of the sun god, and likely the Ancient Kingdom. This symbol initially just seems like a sun, however it is always shown as being a larger central circle with 8 smaller circles revolving around it. What this symbol actually represents is the 8 planets other than the Earth revolving around the sun. I believe both the Jolly Roger and World Government symbol, a central figure with an X, and a central figure with a cross, were derived from this older symbol. When the Straw Hats learn the true history and understand what this symbol represents, Bellamy will be the one to create the final Straw Hat Jolly Roger for the final portion of the story, with both an eye patch and the 8-ended bone pattern. And with that, Luffy and the 29 crewmates at Laughtale will make a vow over Binks Sake to save Sabo and Vivi, take down the world government, fulfill the will of D, and bring the dawn to the world. Now, I believe Oda is going to set up this final portion of the story so that most of it will happen over the course of one day, and this is the great incident of historic proportions that the Grand Fleet will be involved in. In the morning, the Straw Hats and the Grand Fleet will show up at New Marineford to save Sabo from being executed by the Marines like Ace was. This arc is where the Marines as a whole will be defeated. New Marineford is located directly next to Marineford, so immediately afterwards, during the day, the Straw Hats and their forces will storm Marineford to save Vivi from Emu and take down the world government. Then, at night, the main Straw Hat crew and the Blackbeard pirates will go to God Valley, which will be located right above Marineford at the time. These 2 crews will then fight to fulfill their own versions of the Will of D, with Luffy defeating Blackbeard right as the sun begins to rise, and Luffy brings the dawn to the world. Now starting with New Marineford, this arc is, obviously, going to be another mirror of Marineford. The last one though. I think it's going to begin with the Straw Hats and the Grand Fleet showing up like Whitebeard did in Marineford. However, Dragon is the one who is truly going to play the role of Whitebeard this arc. We know that Dragon considers his greatest weakness to be his children, and he likely considers Sabo to be his foster son. It is going to be Dragon helping his biological son save his foster son. This arc is going to be centered around both the Marines and the Revolutionaries, being exemplified by Dragon, a former Marine who saw the evils of the world government and turned against it. This is where we will get Dragon's backstory, likely involving whatever incident it was that disillusioned him with the world government. Now obviously Sabo is not going to die here like Ace. He will be saved by the Straw Hats and the Revolutionaries, becoming the 30th member to join the crew. It is here that I believe Dragon will end up dying, sacrificing himself to make sure that Luffy and Sabo are able to escape and take down the world government. This is when Sabo will become the new leader of the Revolutionaries. While Luffy will likely fight Akainu while Sabo is locked up, Sabo will be the one to defeat Akainu, with Akainu likely insulting Dragon like he did Whitebeard to Ace, though the outcome of this fight will be much different. I believe part of what Sabo's blue color scheme is alluding to is him awakening his devil fruit into blue flames. Blue flames can burn hotter than magma, and we actually have proof that these flames interact differently with Akainu's devil fruit. We can see Marco blocking Akainu's attacks with his blue flames, something Ace was not able to do. By the end of this arc, the Marines as we know it will be defeated. There may be a few individual Marines that show up at Mary Joie against the Straw Hats, but the overall organization of the Marines will be defeated, mainly due to the actions of Kobe. At the end of the original Marineford, it was Kobe's outburst that finally stopped the fighting, and he will have a similar outburst here. Kobe's fellow Marines likely respect him a lot. There is a reason he is called a hero, and I believe he will be instrumental in causing the majority of the Marines to turn against the world government. And finally, Blackbeard is likely to show up near the end of the arc to steal Akainu's devil fruit. I mentioned earlier that part of the reason that Blackbeard wanted Orochi's fruit was so that he could consume even more devil fruits. To show you how much of a threat Blackbeard will be by the end of the series, I would like to show you what I think his final devil fruits will be. When Kaido, Big Mom, and Kuzan die in Lodestar, he will take their devil fruits, while I believe the other two slots will be Akainu's, to make the Ice and Magma duality, and Moria's Shadow Fruit, which perfectly complements Blackbeard's Darkness Fruit. Blackbeard will be an 8-headed dragon made of lava and ice who can create homies and zombies, punch you with an earthquake, and nullify your devil fruit powers on top of all of that. And if Orochi's fruit allows him to consume 8 more, you can add Dragon's fruit, Emu's fruit, and some other crazy devil fruit on top of that. Blackbeard will be an absolute monster by this point in the series that Luffy will seemingly have no hope of defeating. Now with the Marines taken down, the Straw Hats, the Grand Fleet, the Revolutionaries led by Sabo, and the Marines led by Kobe will all storm Mary Joie to take down the world government. The Blackbeard pirates will also play a big role in this. They won't necessarily be helping the Straw Hats, but they will definitely have their interests aligned in this situation. This is where the fights against Emu, the Goroawase, the Holy Knights, and any other important figures in the world government will take place. Now I would like to go over what I believe Emu truly is, and how they got their Earth incarnation powers. Now for a while there was some evidence towards Emu being female, until there was seemingly confirmation that Emu was male. However, I think the truth is less straightforward than either option. On the female side, we have the name Mary Joie, which is a play on words. The first word, Mary, is obviously a woman's name with holy significance, the Virgin Mary, while also being a play on the word mare, Latin for sea, another connection to the sea, as Emu is umi backwards, the Japanese word for sea. The joie part is a play on bourgeois, which fits right in with the celestial dragons. This is what the name Mary Joie is hinting at. Emu's status as the Holy Mother with a connection to the sea that sits at the top of the world's hierarchy. On the male side, we have Ivankov calling Emu Norona Emu Sei, with Sei only being used for male celestial dragons, as well as Emu's speech patterns in Japanese indicating that he is male, seemingly confirming Emu as male. However, I believe both of these are correct in a way, and this is something that is very probable based on one key thing we know about Emu, their immortality. We know it is very likely that Emu's immortality stems from Law's Devil Fruit, as it's the only way we know of to gain immortality in One Piece. But Law's Devil Fruit has another very important power, the ability to swap people's bodies. What I believe Emu is someone who was born a man and then used Law's Devil Fruit to swap bodies with Nefertari Lily in order to steal her Earth incarnation powers, and then made himself immortal, leaving Lily to die in his body. This is why Doflamingo said that Law's Devil Fruit was the key to the sacred treasure of Mary Joie. The treasure is Lily's body with these Earth incarnation powers. Doflamingo wanted Law's Devil Fruit not only to become immortal, but to swap to Lily's body and take these powers for himself. This is why Emu wants Vivi so badly. There is a good chance these powers are swapping to a new host, Lily's descendant, and he wants to switch into Vivi's body to continue his reign. What Emu truly looks like is a villainous version of Vivi, similar to when she was first introduced as a member of Baroque Works, before Oda softened her features. And honestly, take a look at Vivi from back then, and do as she says, look at her outfit, because what I see is the only discernible feature we have of Emu, his eyes, and when you give those eyes to Vivi, looks a bit uncanny, doesn't it? Now I believe the fight against Emu will involve him fighting multiple opponents, Luffy, Vivi, Law, and Blackbeard. Luffy and Vivi are obvious answers, but Law will be there because his Devil Fruit is likely the only way to nullify Emu's immortality, and he will be key in taking him down. As for Blackbeard, I highly doubt Emu makes it out of this alive. Luffy never kills major antagonists, so I think Blackbeard will be the one responsible for his death, as Blackbeard's ambition is to become king of the world like Emu. So with Emu defeated, the world government will finally be taken down, and Vivi will finally join as the 31st and final Straw Hat. Now this is the arc I believe Blackbeard will form his full crew, as I doubt people like Rob Lucci will join Blackbeard until after the world government is defeated. Now many people may find it unlikely that characters like Crocodile and Mihawk will fight under Blackbeard, but at this point in the story, it will be very obvious to everyone that Luffy and Blackbeard are undoubtedly the strongest pirates. There will be a point where you are either backing Luffy for his vision of the future, or backing Blackbeard for his. And these characters are much closer in disposition to Blackbeard, though Mihawk will likely just join him specifically to fight Zoro. Now for Luffy's crew, I found multiple patterns that I go over in other videos. I did not choose Luffy's crew randomly. I didn't choose Mancherry just because I love Mancherry. As things stand right now, she fits the patterns better than Rebecca. But for Blackbeard's crew, I have not found a pattern yet, if there is one. So I am not 100% sure which villains will join Blackbeard at the end. There are a lot of possibilities. This is a good idea of what his crew will look like though. However, I do believe Kaido, Big Mom, and Kuzan will be replaced by their subordinates, while the remaining 16 will be 5 villains that Luffy defeated in each sea, with Caesar as an extra, the wild card in Blackbeard's crew like Buggy is in Luffy's crew. Now with the world government out of the way, this is when the main Straw Hat and Blackbeard crews will make their way up above to God Valley to prepare for the destruction of Mary Joie, while other characters like the Grand Fleet, Revolutionaries, and the Marines evacuate the area. God Valley will be the location of the final fight between these two crews, fighting to fulfill either Luffy's or Blackbeard's version of the Will of D. And I'd like to start by explaining what I believe the Will of D is. I believe that part of the reason the D was shortened to one letter is because there is actually a schism in the D clan, and it means two things. For people like Luffy, it means dawn, while for people like Blackbeard, it means dusk. Dawn and dusk are both words that begin with D that are intricately connected, yet are opposites, two sides of the same coin, like Luffy and Blackbeard. The D is also a symbol, evoking the imagery of a sun on the horizon, which works for both dawn and dusk. This is also why the 3D clan members on the crew are Luffy, Law, and Vivi. They are the incarnations of the sun, the moon, and the earth, the three celestial bodies involved in dawn and dusk. Now I think Blackbeard's vision of what the One Piece is a mirror of Luffy's, the dusk of the world, so to speak. Luffy's version of the One Piece is an interconnected world accomplished by the destruction of the Red Line and by making the universe revolve around the sun. I believe Blackbeard's goal is to make the universe revolve around the moon, creating a twisted version of the One Piece. The moon controls the tides, and by changing the universe like this, I believe the tides will significantly rise, causing either flooding or tidal waves throughout the world. This will make the Red Line the one piece of land that is actually inhabitable, making it much easier for Blackbeard to rule over the world as king of the world. Now as for the matchups, I'm only going to go over the two most important ones, especially since I'm not 100% on who will join Blackbeard. However, one thing I do believe will be a common theme in these matchups is that the Straw Hats will defeat the villains that Luffy saved them from. For example, Nami will defeat Arlong, Law will defeat Doflamingo, etc. This will likely not be true in all of the cases, but it is a very good way to show how these characters have grown, and Luffy's positive influence on them. Moving on, the second to last fight in the series will be Zoro versus Mihawk. This will be Zoro's final battle, where he will finally claim the title of the greatest swordsman in the world. Now before I talk about Luffy and Blackbeard, I'd like to talk about the destruction of Mary Joie on Fishman Island. A big part of the reason that people figured out the destruction of Mary Joie would create the All Blue was because of Madame Charlie's prediction that Luffy will destroy Fishman Island, located directly under Mary Joie. However, I think it is much more in line with Oda's style to make it seem like Fishman Island will be destroyed, which is what Madame Charlie saw, only for it to be saved at the last minute. The fishmen have been oppressed for hundreds of years, and I don't think Oda will also destroy their home. Now the Noah is supposed to evacuate all the fishmen before Fishman Island is destroyed, but this seems odd to me. The fishmen and mermaids are already incredible swimmers. They don't really need the Noah to evacuate, and the few who likely couldn't make the journey, the sick and elderly, could just be packed on a normal ship. I think the true purpose of the Noah is to move all of Fishman Island to the surface, exactly where Mary Joie stood, as the center of the All Blue. Now back to Luffy and Blackbeard. Luffy never kills the main antagonist, and I think for Blackbeard that will also be the case. However, his fate will be worse than death. There's a good chance that by this point in the story, through some way or another, Blackbeard will be immortal, on top of having at least 8 devil fruits. It will seem like Luffy has absolutely no hope of beating him. However, all of Blackbeard's crazy powers mean nothing if you are the size of an ant. As the dawn breaks behind him, Luffy will grow to absurd proportions, even larger than the ancient giants, and hit Blackbeard with an absolutely massive blow. Blackbeard will be cast down from God Valley and sink to the bottom of the sea. Luffy will then destroy Mary Joie using the weapon on God Valley, and the ruins of Mary Joie will pin Blackbeard to the seafloor. Blackbeard will be trapped at the bottom of the ocean powerless, unable to breathe or die, for all eternity, without even the solace of sleep. This is Davy Jones' locker, the natural fate for the inheritor of not only Rox's will, but Davy Jones's. And with that, I believe we will get the final arc of the series, Romance Dusk, which will also be the name of the final chapter. In Romance Dawn, Luffy visited the first 3 locations of his journey, and Romance Dusk will be the final 3 locations we see Luffy visit. First, Fishman Island, now on the surface where Mary Joie once stood, making it in close proximity to God Valley. At the end of each arc, Luffy typically has some sort of party to celebrate his victory, and this party on Fishman Island will be the biggest celebration of them all. I believe Luffy's dream is most likely to have the biggest party in the world. A lot of other theorists have said this as well, but for good reason. It not only fits Luffy's character perfectly, but also with people's reactions to his and Roger's dream. And now that Luffy has finally accomplished his dream, he will visit Ace's grave, on Sphinx, the second location of this arc. Ace said he wanted to see Luffy accomplish his dream, so Luffy will not visit Ace's grave until after he does this. This also gives us time for the full Straw Hat crew to be formed, so that not only Luffy, but Sabo, Yamato, and Tama can also pay their final respects to Ace. Which will lead us to the final chapter of the series, Romance Dusk, which will be set on Logtown. This will take place after a substantial time skip. Nami's dream is to map the entire world, and Frankie's dream is for the Sunny to travel the entire world. So this chapter will take place after Luffy has also traveled the North, South, and West Blues. I bring this up because despite the title of this video, I don't believe the series will end with Luffy having 31 crewmates. It will end with Luffy having 61 crewmates. Luffy met 10 crewmates in each sea, and I think Oda is going to continue this pattern. Since Luffy explored the remaining 3 blues over the time skip, he will meet 10 crewmates in each of these seas, essentially doubling the crew for the last chapter. Mind you, this is mainly as a gag and to continue the pattern Oda has already set up. We won't get anything substantial about these crewmates, though I'm sure Oda will poke fun at the fact that we don't know anything about them. I also believe that there are characters throughout the series that are meant to be replacement crewmates. What I mean by this is that there are crewmates that have dreams that do not involve staying with Luffy after the dawn of the world. For example, Kobe's dream is to become an admiral, so it is likely that after Luffy takes down the government, he will leave the Straw Hats to become the new fleet admiral, with Helmeppo joining him. I think Oda has placed certain characters throughout the East Blue and the Grand Line that are meant to take over for these crewmates. In Kobe and Helmeppo's case, characters like Johnny and Yosaku. Now since Luffy has finally traveled the entire world after this time skip, he seemingly has nowhere left to explore. I believe the focus of this final chapter is going to be that Frankie has turned the Sunny into a spaceship, with Logtown being its launch point. And after the Straw Hats say their goodbyes, they will head into space to become space pirates, the universe giving them unlimited opportunities to continue their adventures. And with that, One Piece will finally end. I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and for my longer-term viewers, thank you for being patient for so long for this video to come out. I do, however, have one favor to ask. You may have noticed that I never ask people to like and subscribe, and there is good reason for that. For those who haven't seen my videos before, while you can expect an occasional One Piece video in the future, I have no intentions of becoming a YouTuber. I have my own dream that I want to accomplish, and that is to open a donations-based record label, and to make my albums a different genre every album, to hopefully expand people's minds and tastes. I have a video on my channel going over my dream if you'd like to know more, and I am currently releasing a mixtape where each song is a different genre if you'd like to check out my music. I say this because I am about as grassroots as it gets. Don't expect any corporate sponsorships in my videos, and don't expect me to pander for likes and subscriptions. I do not want to talk the talk but not walk the walk. I do not agree with how YouTube is currently run. I believe the way the algorithm is set up hurts most content creators in the long run, especially smaller content creators. I want nothing to do with it or corporate culture in general. The favor I am asking, though, is that if I have convinced you of my theory, or just made you question your notions about what the final crew will be, please share this theory with other One Piece fans. Don't spam it, don't be annoying. There are going to be people who dismiss it without even hearing the arguments. Ignore them. I'm positive I will get the last laugh. But I'd like the community to understand this is a real possibility. Thank you to everyone who shares this, and I hope you live your life following and accomplishing your dreams. Peace, everybody.